Oh, welcome to another episode of The Growth Compass. Shout out to our sponsor senders. If you want to do cold email deliverability correctly, you hit the email in the description. But without them, it wouldn't be possible to interview awesome people doing awesome things. Chrisley, and I want to mention that this is an extra special episode coming from the source itself. Chrisley from Senders.
Hey
What's
man,
up?
how's it going?
Awesome. Well, I'm not sure how many people out there know. I do talk about it a lot, but Chrisley's perspective, Chrisley's perspective on things, and his
Oh
his
boy.
experience, man, I love it. I
Oh
listen
man.
to him. I take notes. I'm writing a biography. It's
Put too
going
much
awesome.
pressure on me, man.
So this is special. It's always awesome when I get to take all the things that I've been hearing, that I've been learning, and get to hear it from your perspective. So, for the people that don't know, somehow, if you could give an intro of who you are and what you're building.
Yeah, I'm Chrisley Ceme. I'm the revenue director here at Senders and a fractional CRO as well. Essentially, I'm like all things sales, lead gen, marketing, essentially all things revenue, and more actually, that encompasses like customer success as well, or account management. I think more and more organizations are realizing this and combining that into their, whether it's head of sales or they have a CRO position, because in today's climate, you definitely need marketing, sales, and your customer success team to be thoroughly aligned and on the same page.
Well, I think usually what I would do is I'd walk through some of your background, how you got to where you're doing and everything. But we already did that,
We
and
did.
I think and I think we have a lot of content to get through as far as like where things are at, as
Sure.
far as getting people to talk to other people,
Yeah.
and from a business lens, is talking about generating leads, sales, things like that. But at the end of the day, it's how do you reach strangers, communicate the value that you have to give them, and let them know that you have that, so that ultimately potentially becomes a business relationship. So
For sure.
I'm curious, off the top of your head, wherever you want to start, what is good with lead generation right now?
Yeah, I would say lead generation right now, I wouldn't call it a crossroads, but I think right now what's happening is everybody is trying to figure out what is going to work for them. And more now, there isn't necessarily like a universal, hey, just do this. And I think people are searching for that. Like, what's the universe? Because traditionally, that's been the thing. Whether it's, hey, here's kind of the playbook, if you will, to generate leads, so on and so forth. And then companies will take that playbook and, not curate it, but customize it to their particular audience, niche, so on and so forth, which is still the case. But I think now, with the advent or boom, if you will, of these AI tools and things of that nature, and with just some of the restrictions that the traditional approaches have had, people are in that state of limbo, trying to figure out, what works.
Well, so if we could break it down, I'm curious.
Sure.
We could start. I think a good place to start would be in your experience, because you're talking to people every day that are doing these things. I know you're reading them. You're going across the country talking about it. Like, what are the main pain points when it comes to lead generation? And the obvious ones are people are just like, I need to speak to more people. I need to generate more business. Whatever. Like, we know that's a pain point. But is like on a more detailed level, what are the pain points? Like deliverability, we spoke to, like
Sure.
a huge thing when email sending, 2 years ago or whatever, when all the restrictions came in, deliverability was the thing, the pain point. Is that still the case? Are there new ones? What are the specific pain points that you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that is still a pain point for sure, but it's probably no longer on the top of the totem pole of pain points, if you will. I think now, quite honestly, the biggest pain point is capturing attention. and how to capture your prospects' attention. One, just getting their attention, but two, getting their attention when they actually need you or need whatever it is that you are providing, and how to get that message across without coming across as salesy or too aggressive, so on and so forth.
Well, so I mean, I feel like from that perspective, like getting someone's attention, like that's always been the challenge. Like, what is different about this environment now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest difference with the environment now in terms of getting attention is with all these new tools that came about, which is great, and people using all these tools, more and more people are flooding, whether it's in your email inbox or your LinkedIn inbox or whatever the case may be. So now you're getting, depending on your title, you're getting flooded with very similar pitches across the board, from many different people. And so when you're getting a lot of something, it's like Netflix. Hey, in the beginning, Netflix didn't have as many titles, so you weren't spending 30 minutes scrolling trying to find something to watch. You was just, hey, click something. Think of that almost with outbound now, where now, because it's so much easier, technically speaking, to just get messaging out there, regardless of if it's great or not great, more and more people are now getting flooded with stuff. And so they're not even looking at the inbox, like myself included. I open up my email. I'm literally just clicking select all, delete. I'm not even like, hey man, I'm just you're getting flooded with stuff. You're like, all right, well, those are just a bunch of sales emails. I don't even need to look at them. So it's really kind of how to stand out, whether you are in the inbox or in someone's LinkedIn messaging or Twitter or whatever the case may be. I think that's a big challenge, how to kind of stand out above the fray, above your competition. And also what is going to convert, what is the data. I think it's actually a big thing too now, where you have your tools like Clay, Phantom Buster, Ample Market, whatever the case may be, where getting the data itself isn't necessarily difficult, but how do you know that's quality data? All these contacts that you're getting, do they actually even need you right now? How can you figure out, do they need you right now? Are you attracting the right person? Are you attracting the right person at the right time with the right messaging coming from the right messenger? I think all those things now are way more paramount than what they kind of used to be. There is something to be said about, even, things are cyclical. I think people want more human interaction, even if they don't necessarily state it. And so there's something to, for example, hey, maybe going back to basics a little bit with infusing cold calling, especially now where people aren't cold calling, or good old fashioned snail mail. I know that sounds crazy, but there's something to be said about, hey, if you have a certain subset of folks that you want to work with or potentially collab with, sending a handwritten letter. You'd be surprised how, you'll definitely get someone's attention if they receive a letter in the mail. Oh, who's this from? They'll definitely read it. And then, from there, hey, if you got the right messaging, now granted, that's more expensive. That's a little bit difficult to scale per se. But, something there to that.
So I've in my own experience, I've had, I would say, a decent amount of success with straight up cold email.
Sure.
Like whether it's in sales positions that I've had, growth leader positions that I've had, or just personally, reaching out to people that I thought were cool, that I wanted to connect with, and just emailing them. A lot of people don't respond, but I've had a decent amount of people that do. And
Sure.
I think it's because of a level of personalization that isn't scalable, but like cold email still does work. And so,
Absolutely.
from a certain perspective, like, how do you see, we had an interesting conversation earlier about this, but, from some people's perspective, cold email is the thing that you need, and that's it. It's the most important thing that you need if you're able to personalize down to a level where people will respond. Do you think that's true? Like, where does cold email fit in the scope of growth, like, of a business?
I do think cold email, especially if you're, in your beginning stages, I do think cold email is still the most inexpensive, fastest, scalable thing you can do for initial outreach, as well as obviously your own content that you're putting out. In terms of personalization, I think what we define as personalization probably needs to change a little bit. Where, like, for example, I don't think, oh, your email says, hey, I saw you went to Hofstra. I've spent time in Long Island and, love the
Yeah.
Islanders. Like that type of personalization, I don't think it's going to really suit people nowadays. I think when you talk about personalization, I look at it more as speaking or meeting your audience where they're at. And so what I mean by that is, having obviously that knowledge of, hey, what is it that my audience needs? What is it that my audience is dealing with that I can solve or that I know how to solve, so on and so forth, and speaking to that and proving that you have credibility in that space to be speaking to them about that. I think if your email is speaking to those things and resonating with your audience, yeah, you're not going to get 100% reply rate, but you'll definitely still get replies, still generate meetings, to eventually obviously close business.
So how do you go about in a systemic way? Like say, let's just take for example, let's say hypothetically you're at a company, you can slap whatever industry you want. I know you like movies, sports, whatever. Let's just say you're at a company, like you're looking to do
Give me
growth.
an industry. I don't because I don't want to cheat everybody. Give me something random.
All right, let's say you do like a B2B service in the movie industry. What would that be? Like you provide a
B2B
service,
service in the movie industry. So
like you
I'm
provide a
serving
service to
movie
theaters.
studios. Okay, the theaters. Okay.
Yeah, what do they need? Just one thing, like a beat.
Well, they need more people to go to the movie theaters. That's for sure.
All right. So you do lead gen for movie theaters. All right, and
Well, if I'm doing lead gen for movie theaters, that is probably more so lead gen to advertisers because they're trying to get maybe ads on those when you first go to the movie, before, like all those trailers. Now they before you have the movie trailers, but now I don't know when was the last time you've been to a movie theater, but there's also straight
too
up
long
ads there
ago.
for like you might see like a sleepy mattress ad at a movie theater before the movie starts, depending on the theater.
How about this? You sell more comfortable chairs
Mm,
to movie
okay.
theaters. All
Nice,
right.
nice,
And
nice.
we're assuming that
Mm,
that is like a pain point in the industry. People are not going to the movies because you get there and you leave and you need back surgery because it's so bad. All right.
sure.
So that's a pain point. There's like it's a competitive market, whatever. So let's say you're in the face of this. And they say, Chrisley, we need you. And you have all of this knowledge at your disposal, all the tools, like we're talking about all these different channels. You have the technical capacity because you do at Senders to facilitate to manage all of the marketing, the deliverability of emails, like LinkedIn messages, whatever. But what we're talking about is the quality of the messaging. How do you go from a place where you don't have a tight grip on the messaging to a place where you do have a tight grip on the messaging? Like, how do you? It just seems, from my perspective, it just seems overwhelming to go from this place to this place because you need so much data and at the same time you need sales to run a business. So how would you do that?
Great question. So if that's my market,
Appreciate that.
um, I would take things. I would go a little backwards. So instead,
Okay.
I would, in first, in terms of the data, obviously, you can find like, hey, movie theater chains and individual movie
Yeah.
theater owners. You find that information on like Apollo or whatever the case
Right.
may be. In my messaging, well, two front. I would be combining cold email and potentially like LinkedIn outbound, right? Um, from a LinkedIn standpoint, or excuse me, from a cold email standpoint, well, first I would see, hey, what are the conferences? Like, where do all these movie theater owners or managers
Okay.
commune at? Like, I would imagine there's conferences, for these people that they're going to discuss, hey, trends in the theater business, so on and so forth. So I would look up those conferences and I would reach out to folks, not even necessarily about the chairs per se, but more so about those particular conferences and saying, hey, are you going to be attending such and such conference? I'll be there, or I'd love to have a chat with you, so on and so forth. And I would kind of lean more that route just to kind of get those initial conversations going. In terms of messaging, I would be speaking to these people, but about their consumers. So the people, hey, I've seen studies or I have data showing, hey, X amount percentage of people are complaining about their backs hurting after sitting in a movie theater for X amount of time. Because of that, we've developed some new technology in our chairs that's going to allow for that soothing or whatever the case may be, and speaking directly to the issue and how people are now saying, hey, matter of fact, I would even backtrack. Hey, people are complaining about their backs hurting, and now people are once they go to a movie theater once, they're not going back to that same theater. They're going out of their way to go to other theaters who have these more comfortable chairs. These other theaters, they're getting X amount of return business, so on and so forth. And so, hey, they've actually used us, or they used, whatever. I wouldn't mention the other solutions, but they're upgrading their chairs. This is super important. By upgrading your chairs, they're getting a 1.5x return on new people going to the theaters, and these people are returning to come back, whether it's going to the same movie or another movie. That doesn't really matter. So I would focus my messaging more on the end user than them having the problem per se, and saying, hey, how can you have you solved for this, or how do you solve for this problem, and instead of pitching anything, is this a problem that you're seeing? How are you solving for that problem? It would be my approach. Or I'd even take it a step back further and say, hey, we've noticed that there's this problem. I'm conducting some research to see how these theater chains are currently dealing with this problem. I'd love to get your feedback on it. Do you think it's a problem? If so, how are you solving that problem? And just try and start a conversation. I wouldn't even necessarily lead with, hey, I'm trying to fill all of your 9 theater rooms with
Yeah.
all new chairs, or so on and so forth.
I think I think, I mean, the reason I like is because I love talking to people. So I think that's cool, and I think a difficult balance to strike is when you're talking about doing research, collecting data, talking about messaging, stuff like that, which I think is all legit. I think it all actually does work. Talking to people, like you hear that all the time. Everybody
Yeah.
says like talk to people with the problem so that you can understand it and then better, frame your solution. But like how am I making it too complicated by asking these questions? But how do you actually go about it in an intelligent way, collecting the data, understanding, the conversations you're having, and actually crafting messaging that works? Because let's say, for example, because I like what you said about, talking to people about their perception of the problem. But let's say, for example, like it would be easy for us to say, let's start a movie theater chair company because people aren't going because of their backs. What if that often this is what happens with starting a business? Often that's not, the case. Like, let's say we went to like 20 theaters and all of them were like, yeah, like that's not the reason we would want, new chairs. It's like it's something deeper, like some other form of messaging that would actually get these people to reach back out to you. So
Well, that's where
like
A/B
how do you
testing comes
how do
into
you
the equation.
okay, so yeah, how
And
do you go about A/B testing at scale in an organized way, actually making progress, stuff like that?
so, if that's actually not the problem, I wouldn't lead
Somehow.
with, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily lead with that as the problem. Now we do know, we just happen to know universally, hey, people aren't going to the theaters at the rate that they used to go to the theaters. Like that's a fact. So to
Okay.
your example, I wouldn't assume that the problem is necessarily the chairs. But I would still reach out to those folks and say, hey, obviously people aren't going to the theaters as much. I'd have different types of messaging, and I would A/B test different messaging and record the data on, hey, which of these email prompts are people responding to more. One would probably just be, I wouldn't call it generic, but literally what I said in terms of, hey, people aren't going to theaters as much. I'm reaching out to movie theater owners to see how they're solving that problem. Would love to get some feedback from you on, hey, do you think How deep do you think the problem is? Is it really just because of the movies that are out, or is there something that you believe theaters could be doing? That may be one type of variant, or one type of approach I would take. Another type of approach I would take is, yeah, I'd probably speak a little bit directly to the chairs but I would frame it more as, hey, movie theaters, all of these movie theaters need to be providing a different experience outside of the home theater experience to entice the person to say, hey, yes, I can watch this movie at home, but I need to be in that theater. One of those things could very well be the chairs. For example, when I was younger, movie theater chairs, in terms of reclining, they were not reclining at the rate that they recline today. Big difference. You know what I mean? Like, you get a little dip, maybe more times than not. It wasn't necessarily reclining. So now you got certain theaters, they got the heated seats. You get a little massaging. Some of them they recline all the way back. And so I would lead with that, saying, hey, and I would use my data. Now, if I'm a brand new chair company, it might be a little difficult, but I would say things like, hey, what's one way to get people to feel like, hey, this is going to be worth it? Comfort. It's been shown, people pay an arm and a leg for convenience and comfort when you
Hmm.
think about it. Look at Netflix is a perfect example. Um, Technically speaking, you can make an argument it would be more affordable for you to, hey, if you really like certain movies, just buy the DVD. Why continuously pay 15, $20 a month for this service when, how often are you even using your Netflix? Are you really watching Netflix every day? I think more and more people probably aren't, actually speaking, so on
Hopefully.
and so forth. But it's that same approach. So you're saying, so I would take that approach with the movie theaters as well, saying like, hey, people are they're using Netflix as this rental service, so now they're just waiting for movies to come to Netflix. Why? Because the hassle of getting to the theater, paying for the tickets, paying for the concessions, dealing with people next to you being loud, whatever the case may be. Maybe my chairs have a little headphone jack that connects to that. Probably be my differentiator, honestly. I know we're getting outside of the weeds here, but I probably have a little
No,
that
this
be
is great, man.
a
We're
little
ideating
headphone
right now.
a little headphone jack inside the thing. Hey, bring your headphones to the theater so you don't have to worry about people making noise. You can plug your headphones in there, have some, whatever the case may be,
That's
different
genius,
theater
man. We got we got
experiences.
we
Who
got to
knows?
trademark that right now. We got to apply for the patent for the end of
Uh,
the episode.
but ultimately, you want to have a key differentiator for sure. Um, but I would say the main thing I think is we need to get away from using your cold email as the pitch to sell your product or service. You almost want to use cold email as your billboard to prove you know what you're talking about. And then your website, your LinkedIn page, your Twitter page, or whatever other social pages you have are all further proof to your credibility, because when people look at your email, if there is some initial interest, they're going to check out the website, check out your LinkedIn page. Oh, this is legit. Oh, this is not legit. And so you want your email to essentially be the teaser trailer for your movie. Look, the Superman new movie just came out. How they look at their how they released the movie. They started with a teaser trailer, let that run for a few months, whatever the case may be. Then they released the first real trailer. Then they had the second real trailer. So think of those as like your steps in the sequence almost. But initially, you want your emails to just be the thing that sparks that initial interest. For someone to be like, oh, if that's interesting, let me go read up more. When is this movie releasing? Who's in it? Blah 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 blah. And I think people are getting caught up with using cold email or their outbound messaging to sell the prospect on, hey, we're amazing, you need to be working with us. But they don't know you, they don't know who you are, they don't know your brand. Why are they going to just jump from this email to being like, oh yeah, I want to go with this guy because he's, no, they don't know. So you want to use your cold email as an initial teaser trailer high, and now your content is all the credibility building. Your content is the who's the actors. Your content is the work that you've done. Your content is oh, you're an expert in this particular area, whatever that content is, and then having lead magnets, so on and so forth. And I think if you take your outbound messaging and frame it in your mind from that standpoint as, oh, the goal of this is just to spark the interest, versus the goal of this is versus what I see a lot happening now, where people are trying to use that to completely sell the person prior to them even knowing who you are. Like, they don't know you. Introduce you. And it's not just, hey, I'm Chrisley, Ceme, revenue director. No, introduce what you're representing, who you are, what you do, why you're good at what you do. You'll get more traction.
So I do have a question about how you see people being successful in managing all those arms of
Sure.
just growth in general. But before we get there, I wanted to go back to the idea, two questions about the idea of testing the messaging, because all the arms that we're talking about managing, the messaging needs to be consistent, like you're talking about. Like if you're
Sure.
reaching out, speaking on one thing in an email, you want the same thing to be spoken to on the landing page, on the about page, on the LinkedIn like on the blogs, like whatever, like all of that stuff. But so when you're at the stage of needing to, because I feel like a company goes through they go through seasons of being successful with messaging, and then it changes, and then they need to do it
Yeah.
again. So when we're considering that now, the landscape is not that you can pull one lever, which is cold email. You can pull one lever, which might be like whatever search channel, and there needs to be all of these things going at once. And you want to be testing messaging. It seems, again, my perspective, it can be overwhelming to look at all of these channels and be like, holy shit, I need to A/B test like 16 different channels. You know what I mean? So how do you approach A/B testing in order to be as efficient but gather the most signal as possible? And B, are there any like technical solution, like a tech stack to do this? Like, are you talking about like just tracking everything in Excel, or are we talking about using some other tools to help analyze this data to get to a signal of what messaging works more quickly?
Yeah. So part of this also depends on the stage of your business. So
Okay.
like, if you, let's say you've been in business, like you just mentioned, hey, and things kind of cycle through, which is
Yeah, yeah.
normal, by the way. Part of you knowing this is back to what I said initially about customer success, is being in tune with your customer base. Um, and so here's what I mean by that. Why did your customers choose you? Why are if you have some churn, why are your customers leaving you? Uh, Gathering this information will help serve you in terms of what you're saying to people on the outside. And so by understanding your current customer base, hey, why do they like you? Why did they choose you? Why do they continue working with you? Literally taking that information and then using it in your outbound messaging to start is where I would start. Um, from there, in terms of the tech stack to do this, part of that depends on what channels you're choosing to operate, or what channels you're on. But for example, you have tools like Clay, Phantom Buster, Ample Market is another great tool where you can do both LinkedIn and email outreach kind of within there, building certain signals. To reach out to people when there's some sort of buying intent or predetermined signal based upon what works for you. For example, maybe in your business, when people are hiring a certain position, that is a telltale sign that they're looking for your software, for example. Oh, okay, great. You set up signals around that. Maybe in your cold email, instead of asking about the tool, you say, hey, are you looking to bring on whatever that title is in your email? We work with those titles in terms of making sure that they come in. When they come in, they have the tool set that they need to really hit the ground running and really turn things around, whatever the case may be. And turn your email, like, you want your email, essentially your messaging, you want it to come off as helpful ultimately, and you're providing some front end value because people don't know who you are. Now, this is a completely different approach if, hey, you have brand recognition in the market, so on and so forth. Then you don't necessarily need to be so handholdy in the beginning. You could maybe just pump out more ads that quarter, per se.
So then as far as like doing the testing and
Hmm.
keeping track of the testing, organized fashion, being scientific about all that stuff, that comes down to the softwares that you're ultimately using for the outreach. So you're saying?
Well, software and strategy, because for example, any piece of software is ultimately a tool.
Okay.
So if you don't know what you're doing, or don't know what to say, blah blah, what's the software doing? You know what I mean? Now, with that being said, you need the tools. You need a hammer to bang in nails. You're not going to want to use, you can use something else, but it's much more inefficient. So yes, you
Yeah.
certainly want to be using the right tech stack for your needs, but also a tech stack that your team either has comfort with or can gain the knowledge to be comfortable with. You don't want to be necessarily using things that people have no idea what to do with either. And
All
so
right.
when you're
So,
assessing these tools, those are things you want to think about. If you have a team, hey team, honestly, especially as a leader, you need to talk to the team. They know the problems, and 9 times out of 10, they know the solutions, and they're sitting there frustrated because the leaders have not provided them with said solutions. And if you
mm,
sit down, have a team meeting, and just, hey, put it out there. Hey guys, here's where we're at. Love to kind of hear feedback from you guys. What do you think is working? What do you think is not working? Oh, they're going to tell you because they're in it every day. Trust me. Like, some of this is really not rocket science. It's that
uh,
communication, and then from there you take what they're saying, and now you know what you're looking for. Oh,
well,
okay,
so,
they want a tool that does A, B, C, D, and E. That's perfect. Now, when you're out searching, or people are sending you cold emails, because I guarantee you, everybody, you have a bunch, a bunch of messages in your inbox right now that
uh,
you haven't looked at. You reach out to those folks. Hey, do you do A, B, C, D, and E? If they don't do those things, you're on to the next.
hmm. Well, so all this considered, are is there and completely open if this example comes with your own work at senders because you this is what you guys are doing. But
Sure.
who do you think is a good example that you know of a company that's doing everything that we're talking about well? Like they have the messaging down, they're utilizing their channels well, their website's in good shape, they're doing, you know, cold outreach in a way that makes sense. Like is there a company off the top of your head that comes to mind that's doing things well?
Yeah. Um, that's a great question. Um, One company that comes to mind is a company called Benny Health. Shout out Benny Health. They're doing a pretty good job, I'd say. Why they're doing a good job? One, they understand their market, um, and two, they're very systematic in the messaging that they put out. They're data driven, so they're looking at all the data, looking at the results, but they're not solely relying on cold email. They're using cold email as essentially the introduction to them, but it's being supplemented by webinars that they're hosting, white papers that they offer to send, and they're using cold email almost like a social media post, where their goal from the email isn't even necessarily meeting booked. It's engagement. It's just getting the replies, getting the conversation going, because one, that's how you can ensure you're landing in inbox. Because now, if you're sending links, hey, click here to book a call or whatever the case would be, one, that can actually harm your deliverability, and messages not land in the inbox. But two, once you're kind of generating those replies, you're able to consistently land in their inbox now, and you're getting a conversation going that can then lead to said call, whatever the case may be. And then the next part that I think is super, super crucial, people spend a lot of money getting leads, getting contacts, um, and they'll reach out to them, hey, maybe 2, 3 times, and never reach out to them again, and are so
Hmm.
focused on new, 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 new. And understanding a lot of deals are timing based, as we mentioned. Yes, you can set up signals to reach out to a certain subset of your audience when they have that need, but there's going to be another subset that all you want to do is be on their mind when the need comes up. So you want to have your nurture campaigns, whether it's a newsletter or hey, after maybe the initial sprint, you keep them in like a once a month cadence with updates that you have, whether it's success stories, so on and so forth, links to new LinkedIn content or new things that you're doing, so that they're systematically and periodically getting these things, so that when the need does arise, they're like, oh yeah, I remember Blake sent me some email about this thing, and now Steve in accounting is complaining about QuickBooks. Well, let me go talk to Blake, and see what he has, since he's been sending me these messages the past 6 months,
Yeah. Okay.
for
Yeah. Yeah.
example.
Well, cool.
So
I
you want
think
to look at cold email as like a subset will be immediate need. There's going to be another percentage of those where it's going to be need down the line, and you want to still value all of those and then label them such SQLs and MQLs if that's how your organization does it.
Yeah, I think I don't know how much context you have into that company, so it's okay if the answer is no. But I am curious, with related to a conversation earlier. Do you know, you mentioned that that company that you shouted out has good grip on their on their messaging, has good grip on like their channels and things like that. Do you have any information about how they got to that place?
Yeah. Well, not well, to a degree, because we have worked with them for quite some time. Um,
Okay.
and initially, how it started was just sourcing decision makers in their field based upon their titles. And what they did, or what we did with them, I should say, initially, is reach out with just information. I don't remember exactly what the information was, but it was like statistics, like hey, um, like did you know, in like doctors currently are dealing with this. Don't know if you know that, but we've noticed that so many people in this particular space. This is the like I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was just
Yeah. Yeah.
straight
Yeah.
like value informational emails, not
Okay.
necessarily asking for anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then what happened was people were replying was, oh, I didn't know that, or oh yeah, we've been working on that, so on and so forth. Do you have more information on that? Can you share with me where you got that information from? Then at that point there, I can't tell you exactly what happened, because now it was in their account executives' hands. But then they would
Sure.
reply, follow up, and then end up turning that into a sales call. Now the con to that approach is it does elongate the sales cycle a little bit. um, so there's that. But what happens is that their meeting hold rate goes up. So even though, yes, maybe it takes a little bit longer to get those meetings booked, when those meetings are booked, their hold rate was like, I think like 85% or something like that, to that degree. I'm not in their books to that degree to give you the exact numbers,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
No,
it's
that's all good.
significantly higher than traditional cold email or cold calling, where your hold rate, you're lucky if it's like at 50-50.
Okay. So it was, so you went from a position of not having a good hold on the messaging, the marketing channels, things like this, to, and your first approach was just to send something valuable to get people to respond.
Correct.
So from there you were able to have conversations, and from those conversations gathered information about what messaging could be useful, and that's how you started the flywheel.
Exactly. Exactly. So between those and, like I mentioned before, your current customer base, between those two things, you're gonna have those answers per se. It's just a matter of then how you frame it. And then with that, that's just like I said, A/B testing, trying different things, seeing what works, recording, what works, and understanding that hey, this will work for a subset amount of time. And while things are working, you want to be also working on some other stuff, in the event that hey, one channel goes down, another channel is up, so on and
Sure.
so forth.
Wow. I feel like a sponge, Chrisley. That's so much information, man.
I mean,
This is so
I
cool.
will say now, what I'm finding exciting is um, creating or building your own triggers, on various different sites that your market is in. So, like for example, let's look at Senders. Senders is a cold email deliverability system with lead gen agency. And so, for example, we built some signals on G2 reviews, looking at I wouldn't even call them our competitors, but looking at different software that we know people who have outbound teams are using, and looking at those reviews and setting up triggers around those so that when people in our ICP are leaving a review of Clay or Phantom Buster or whatever outbound tool that they're using, we can then reach out saying, hey, I noticed your review on Phantom Buster on G2, and they said whatever they said on their review. Hey, here's how we can supplement that. Here's how we assist with that. Would love to, hey, get your feedback on that. Is that something you need? Is that something you're struggling with? So on and so forth. That's been um, a great lead source for us in that regard. And then now, taking that a step further and saying, okay, let's create triggers, on our own content that's speaking directly to our market base. So, for example, what's a big hot topic item now is all these different AI tools, how to choose which tools, which ones are most effective. So, creating content around things like, hey, here's the three things that heads of sales probably need to be looking at when assessing um, how they're going to use AI automation in their outbound channels. And now once you have that, you put that out there, people are engaging with that, and then you set up triggers around that to then follow up with those folks who are
Sure.
indeed engaging in that. So it's creating different touch points on the interweb, if you will, where you're speaking directly to your clientele or your market and their needs versus the traditional spray and pray model.
Yeah. All right. Well, related to that, I would say, and this is similar to a question I asked you earlier, but what would you say, either in your own experience, working with these clients and senders, or a company that you know of, whatever, however you want to use this, but what's the biggest hurdle right now for you or for the people in your network as far as growing their business?
The biggest hurdle. Wow. Um,
Yeah, this one. I mean, you can mention these too,
yeah. I think
or
the
multiple if they're.
yeah, because I mean, there's multiple. I mean, and to be honest, we've really discussed them. It's getting through the white noise.
Okay.
Um, you know, uh, uh, Getting through the white noise, getting in people's purview, and I mean, that's the main thing. Honestly, I know it's
Okay.
kind of redundant, but like that's really the main hurdle. Hey, how can we get in
Well,
front of these people with what we offer to reach out to them? Now, obviously, after that point, it's all the traditional hurdles. Hey, how can we get them to each next phase of the sales cycle,
yeah,
so
yeah,
on
yeah.
and so forth. But I think right now the big like whereas traditionally in the past, as you mentioned, hey, you could simply set up a cold email campaign, put in some titles, put in some filters, and you're gonna, just with sheer volume, you're gonna get, hey, a 3, 4, 5% reply rate, which in turn, if you have the volume, that's 20, 30, maybe, meetings, if you will, or conversations. Maybe of those
Yeah.
conversations, 15 of them turn into a meeting, 10 of them turn into a pitch, so on and so forth.
Well, I mean, it's redundant, but it's not like it's both redundant and not redundant. It's redundant in the sense that people from the beginning of time have
Right.
been, that's been the issue, but it's not redundant in the sense that the reason it's hard to cut through white noise is because of the type of technology that's available. Shut up,
Mm-hmm.
Batman, to the general public. And I think that's what's interesting about what you're saying is that yes, it's redundant in the sense that it's been a problem forever, but the methods that you're speaking to, I think, speak to pain points that are very current and relevant. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
My
I think
last
it's
thing,
all I
which
think at this point it's all value leading, value and credibility leading,
yeah,
and not necessarily going for the jugular, if you will. And you really have to take the time on the front end to understand your market. And that's a very easy thing to skip. Hey, you start up a business, whatever the case, you just go, and rightfully so. Hey, it's hustle. I get it, but you really want to take that time to understand. Hey, is this something that my market even needs right now?
yeah,
Or
sure,
yes,
yeah,
maybe they need it, but do they know that they need it? Oh, if you're selling something that people need but they don't know you need, well then your messaging needs to be all around. explaining to your market base why this particular thing is a need and where your value comes in said need, if that's the case. So you got to really understand what it is, which I would assume people understand what it is that they're pitching slash selling, but then B, understand where that fits in a, if it's a head of sales you're reaching out to, where does this particular thing fit in their priority scale? Like understanding a head of sales, what's their main priority? Their main priority is closing deals. Now maybe they're leading a team, and so for them their main priority is making sure there is enough um, um, leads for my team to close deals. Okay, if that's their primary, that's their head of sales, more than often that's their primary concern. Maybe they have another concern of, oh, I need more qualified sales reps, or I need some new ways to train them because they're struggling with objection overturning, for example, whatever it
Sure.
is. And so you want to know in your niche what is exactly the issues that the people you're reaching out to care about, b on their priority scale. And if your product slash service handles what's number one on their priority scale, you start from there. Hey, I know, and even in your, hey, I know heads of sales right now are all dealing with lead flow for their outbound channels. Understanding that, here's what we're doing for them. I would even get super specific. And okay, you're reaching out to heads of sales, and let's say you are doing cold email at scale. I would take all the heads of sales that I have, and I would split them up, or categorize them is the right term, excuse me, categorize them through their niches, industry, company size, whatever it is, those determining different sectors that work for you, and say, okay, hey, I want to reach out to all the heads of sales who are heads of sales for SaaS companies, SaaS fintech companies, for example. So now in your messaging, you can speak directly to, hey, what's the problem with heads of sales in fintech SaaS companies? So that you're
Yeah,
getting a
yeah.
little bit more specific, speaking exactly to that particular concern that they have, so that you want your email to be something that they're nodding their head to. Yeah, that is a problem. Yeah, I do. I was just talking to some, like, that's what you want. Yes, yes. And then what's your call to action? You want your call to action to be something that is an easy lift. That's another thing. If there is no brand recognition, they don't know who you are. Asking for time is the most valuable resource on the planet. Once
Right.
you spend a second, you can't get that second back. So if you're going to ask somebody, and there's nothing wrong with asking somebody for 30 minutes, but you just got to understand, if I'm asking somebody for 30 minutes, why are they going to give me this 30 minutes? Would
So,
you,
Chris,
if you read this email, would you give yourself 30 minutes? If the answer is no, then you know you need to rework your messaging.
hmm, look, Chris, this has been an atypical episode, and man, I love hearing and listening to you talk about this stuff because I think you are one of the individuals that has the perspective, that knows what they're talking about. And I I can't help myself to ask. It's kind of deviates from the rest of our conversation, but with all this that goes on, all of these, the perspective that you have, the people that you're helping, what inspires you to continue doing it?
Um, well, one, it's all storytelling at the end of the day, and I enjoy telling stories. But two, I think now more and more people are sending cold emails and they don't even really care, or at least the messages can be received as they don't even really care what you do and what your problems are. I couldn't
Hmm.
begin to tell you how many cold emails I got. Like, just matter of fact, just today, I got a cold email saying, "Hey, Chrisley, love what you're doing at Senders." Or love what you've built at Senders. I'm not the founder, so there's one strike right there. Two, we are like a book publishing company and love to send you a sample of a book that we're writing about what you're doing. Would you be interested in having some book publishing? Why, as a revenue director at a cold email agency, would I care about book publishing? You see what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of that happening right now. And now, granted, when you look at that, it's not to say that sales rep at that company doesn't care, but what probably happened? They probably just got a list of titles or hey, here's the titles that we want to reach out to. Here's the messaging. Go. And whatever filters they have in their Apollo account or whatever the case may be is why I received that messaging. I completely get it. But there's a lot of that happening right now to our earlier point because of the tools that are out there. And so you need to be looking, taking a step back, say, understanding, hey, who are these emails going to? Why are they receiving these emails? Does this make sense? Sometimes you can go about it through different routes. I'll give you another example. Working with this client where they provide essentially marketing, like digital marketing services to brands that want to get in front of foodies. Like that's their like that's who they work with. People who sell or work with people who are foodies, right? And so one of the things I found working with them is, hey, for example, who are some big foodies? People who have Amex cards, for example. Now, people think, huh, why would you want to reach out to American Express to get in front of a food loving audience? Well, their when you have their rewards program for your credit card, what are some of those big reward things? Going out to restaurants, going to grocery stores, so on and so forth. And so reaching out to marketing agencies that work with credit card companies and their reward programs, you wouldn't necessarily think that off the top of your head if you're in that industry, but that's a great audience for them. So, okay, hey, we designed a campaign around brands that are working with credit card that work with rewards programs. And they reach out to them, hey, do you have any client that's in the restaurant space or have food reward programs? We'd love to work with you to help you get in front of that audience, so on and so forth, to boost the rewards program. Things like that. You want to work backwards and say, okay, hey, who is it that they serve, and what I'm doing, and how can I help them and find that audience? Because now what happens? One, those credit card reward companies, their messages are probably not getting within their inbox. They're probably not receiving a lot of messages about specific clients that they have in their reward programs. They're probably receiving messages about, hey, here's how we can help downgrade your interest rates, whatever the case may be. And so now this message stands out because it is their audience, but they didn't necessarily go about it in the obvious route and obvious channels. They kind of took a back channel, or here's one vertical that's a little bit of a back channel. You see what I'm saying? I know I'm kind of, stumbling through the words there, but that's essentially what I'm talking about is once you kind of understand your audience, know what they're doing, know what they need, you can then really think about it as like, okay, who uses this? Well, these people use it. Well, these people use it. Okay, how can I get in front of them? It may not necessarily be just talking to heads of sales, for example.
Well, I think ultimately what's super useful about everything that you're speaking to is, again, I mean, I think it can be. I am one of the first people. If this wasn't you and this wasn't me, and I came across this episode, I'd be like, oh, they're talking about the same stuff. But it
Yeah,
really is. It really is the same stuff through a different lens because the landscape is different and
correct.
what you're speaking to is legit. Like it is how, like, the white noise that we're trying to get through has always been there, but what it's comprised of is different. And everything you're speaking to, being specific, being creative about the different avenues, being really specific, intentional about the messaging, especially with all this AI stuff that happens, it is super important. So man, I just really appreciate you coming
No
on
worries,
to
man.
to
Anytime.
talk about it. And this is real. You got to list. This is first. This is the industry. Chrisley is the industry. So if anyone's out there and they're looking to either get in touch or follow your journey, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely get at me on LinkedIn, Chrisley Ceme. You can find me on senders.co, my email address. I'm sure we'll have it in the description and all that stuff. But I would say those are the two best places to find me.
Great. Well, Christy, you're definitely coming back, man. I need more of this content. I think the world needs more of this content.
Hey, man. I
so
mean,
I,
to be honest, a lot of this stuff, I'm not going to say I have it all figured out or whatever the case may be. There's always nuances and things, but
yeah,
a lot
yeah,
of this is taking a step, breathing, and just, hey, why am I reaching out to these people?
yeah.
Why do they need me? Do they need me? Answer those questions. The answers to those questions are your first draft. You know what I mean? Like, and then you go from there, and then you adjust accordingly.
And you got to be honest. You got to be
Yes,
really honest
yes,
about those
yes.
answers. You can't lie to yourself.
Yeah, because you're only hurting yourself from
That's
that
right. That's
standpoint.
right. Chris, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. And
No
I'll
problem,
definitely see
man.
you soon. We got to do this sooner, right? Things
Hey.
change quickly, you know?
No
All right, man.
worries.
You got it. Bye.
See ya.